So fused, 3/8 of an inch left alone. We fold it over, and we're gonna top stitch it like what we did with the collar band. So I'm gonna put that aside so I can just work on the placket for now, because that's the first thing has to be done, and then we're gonna go back and prep the cuff after. So you do have these plackets here, which there's some notches in here indicating where the placket gets sewn into the sleeve. So these 3 notches at the bottom and 3 notches at the top corresponding, and then there is a drill hole here, obviously, right? This drill hole that indicates the how far we stitch into this, because that drill hole and this drill hole are lining up together. So we have that, and we also have the same 3 notches in here, right? So I'm gonna line this up in a way so that has to be lined up on the wrong side of the cuff, or wrong side of the sleeve. So I have this as my drill hole, you can just circle it, and I have these notches in here that indicates the placket placement. So as I said, you have the same corresponding notches on the placket. These are going to line up together. The drill hole should line up at the same time. So I'm going to take those plackets off. One thing that I want you to do, because you have a pair of sleeves and you have a pair of plackets, even though you cut your sleeves probably separately because your patterns were drafted and laid out separately, but they should have been cut together at the same time so you get identical pieces. The same thing for the placket. But what I need to do, I'm just gonna mark my stitching line on my placket, which is gonna line up with this. I can just draw a line in here as well. The 2 notches, two outside notches are my stitching line. So I can just go and stitch at the top as well, right above my drill hole. So I could have the same mark on my placket. So the way the placket lines up, so just going to highlight my notches here so you can see them. Is it on camera? No. And this. And I would draw a line to indicate my, so I should have a drill hole here somewhere. And I'm going to draw a line or a drill hole here. So the spacing between these stitching lines are 1/2 inch. So the center notch, because I said you have 3 notches at the bottom here, the center notch is your cutting line. So the 2 outside lines are my stitching line. So I'm going to stitch along this line, go across the top 1/2 inch and come back in here down, and then I'm going to slash this open. But I'm going to show you what to do with the slashing and how to do it. So one thing that I want you to do to start with, I want you to mark the wrong side of your sleeves on both sides of this. So these are the wrong sides. So you have two sleeves, I want to keep them as a pair. So there's always that mistake happens that you just flip this and you start sewing and your sleeve's going to end up for one side of the shirt only, both of them. So we want to have a pair for both sides, both armholes. The same thing would happen to the placket. Placket also has to be marked the wrong side. So I'm just going to highlight my notches again so I don't miss it. Just going to draw my stitching line so you can see. And of course, a little bit above your drill hole. That's what that's going to look like. So where I'm marking is the wrong side of the placket and is the wrong side of your sleeves. Okay, so the way this is going to line up, you see the wider part of your placket that has that doghouse shape, that has to be on the wider part of the sleeves. So when you line it up, it has to be lined up this way. The narrower part of the placket is going to be on the narrower part of the sleeve, and the wider part is going to be on the wider part of the sleeve. So don't forget that. So we don't want to rotate this. So let's grab this and take it to the machine, and I line it up and start stitching so you can see how that's going to work. So the idea was that you're lining up your sleeve wrong side up. You're putting the placket the wrong side up as well on top of the placement that you have. And I already drew my line, my stitch line. I just go over that stitch line. I create that kind of rectangle. Go above the drill hole and go back again. So I will show you what to do with that, with the cutting. So as I said, there is a notch in the middle. Right here, that notch in the middle indicates my cutting line. So I would go down ½ inch from my stitch line at the top, because that ½ inch cross stitch that I have here, I'll go below that ½ inch, and I will slash this through to that new point that I have. So I would cut this through. And I should get my own scissors. So I would cut through this, as you see. And from that point, I'm going to cut into the corners to create a triangle. That's what I mean by triangle here. I cut through that, and I cut through this corner without cutting my stitch line. You don't want to cut too far. You don't want to cut your stitches. So you're cutting to create that triangle in the corner. So that's is going to help me for flipping it to the other side later. But right now, I need to take this to the iron and get it pressed. And I'm going to use that template that you have. Or I just want to show you, I can do it without a template, but I just want to show you what that template is. Sure, that would be great. Thank you. I'm going to do the other sleeve as well. So when I go to the iron, I can press it at the same time. Again, I flip this to the wrong side. So now you see that this is on the other side now. So that's for you to double check to make sure that your sleeves are in a pair position. So you have one pair of sleeves rather than two sleeves for one side of the garment. So that also is going to line up with my notches at the bottom and the drill hole at the top. Again, I go above that drill hole to cover it, but I'm going to mark another point in here 1/2 inch below, like the other one. Thank you. So let's stitch this up as well. So don't forget the smaller part of the placket, the shorter part on the smaller part of the sleeve, because after we slash this, there is a shorter, smaller part, and there is the wider part. The narrower one and the wider one. So the bigger part of the placket and the wider part of the sleeve. Don't forget that. So again, I will stitch this here along the line that I have. I go across the top by 1/2 inch. I'll turn around. I'll go down again from there. So that's also is going to get a slash open like this. So I'm going to slash it open only to the new 1/2 inch below point that I have here. Don't forget that. Because I want to have that 1/2 inch to create a triangle. And I cut everything, all the layers, both layers that I have into the corner and into the corner here. So that will give me this triangle. So, let me just, so now I have to go into the iron and I'll show you how to press this and how to prep it, and we bring it back to stitch it and finish it up. The way we press this, obviously this template lines up in here to match with this. So you can just line it up to the bottom edge, and that is going to be a finishing of the placket on top. So, but before I get there, I'm just going to press this. You should have some notches in here pressed for your fold. So the edge of this gets folded up. Halfway through, it should be like 3/8 of an inch. So I fold this edge by 3/8 of an inch. And then I'm going to fold it right at my stitch line again. So that should give you this, right? So that gets folded over like that. Later on, I'm going to wrap it around the edge after the other way, but we'll get there. But I have to get into this one here now. This one also, as I said, you're going to line it up right in the middle of the placket that you have. So you're going to end up like 3/8 of an inch seam or a big 1/4 inch seam in here. So that gets folded over your template. Just make sure it's centered based on the tip, the top part of the placket. Make sure that is centered and is lining up right to the bottom edge of the cuff here. So that gets folded over. I can press that. Keep it in place. Don't let it move, and fold the top corner. Just follow the shape. And also you're folding this top to create that point. And again, after this is done, you should be pressing this as well right to the stitch line. So that is going to give you this. So your seam allowances here, They are still flat. They are not getting folded back. They're still flat. They are still joining together like that. Okay. There's no gap in between. These pieces is going to wrap around those edges and going to go into the other side. So let me just flip this. You can see. So this was pressed that way. And I'm going to bring this out. That corner cutting that I did, creating the triangle, should help me to bring this to the other side. And I should bring this out as well, this way. So I worked with the smaller part first. That is already creased up, pressed and creased up. I'm going to fold that up again and wrap it around my seam allowance. The seam allowance is still sitting flat here, it's not getting folded back. So it's just this getting wrapped around it. It's just like a binding. You're binding a seam. That gets wrapped around the seam allowance and stays down like that. The top, it could be folded nicely. So then after, I'm gonna stitch this down after when I get to the machine, but this goes flat over like this. So this is already pressed, this is already pressed. I'm gonna repress it to make sure I have enough crease line. And then this gets folded over just to cover your seam allowance and stitch line, like this. So you're not going to pull it too far into the shirt. The edge of the fold that you have here, you should come and line up with your stitch line in here. So that lines up with this. And you press it. That should be already pressed. And this gets, that's that way. Okay, so these are two separate ones that has to be stitched first. The bottom one, which is the under part of the placket, is like a binding that gets finished first, edge stitch, and then we're going to put this over and we're going to edge stitch that over that. And I'm going to show you where to start and where to finish that. So let me just press the other one as well so you can see. I don't know if I'll be able to bring that camera a little bit closer. Can you hold the camera closer?
You want me to hold it?
If you can just, yeah, just want to make sure that I have a good view on this.
Like that?
Sure. I mean, probably won't be able to come any closer. You can just zoom on this area in the door. Okay, so as I said, to start, I'm gonna fold the smaller part of the placket by 3/8 of an inch, the edge that is still free, by 3/8 of an inch. I'm just repeating the same thing I did. I just wanna make sure that everybody understand what I'm doing. 3/8 of an inch, so that gives me this fold, right? And then I'm gonna fold it right into my stitch line without creasing, without disturbing my line. So I just put it towards the stitch line and I press it through. So that's basically my stitch line here. I just fold it right to that stitch line. I'll leave that aside. I'm gonna start folding this edge. I use a template for that one. I could use the template again, center it from the top and line it up to the bottom. So you fold the edge over first. Fold the top corner. And fold the other corner. So take your template away. Now you're gonna fold it the same as the other side. right at your stitch line. So you push it to the stitch line like this and press it. So that's gonna go and get creased up later on the other side, but you could pre-crease it ahead of time. As I said, you're gonna flip it to the other side and we're gonna line it up to the stitch line. So I could do that on this side. I could just line it to my stitch line in here, make sure my stitch line is covered, and I could press it, just with a crease line. And I guess I wanna reinforce my corners again. It depends on the fabric you have and where you're pressing that. Depends on that, it gives you a crease line. Some fabric press better than the others. Okay, so that's the shape you're gonna have. Still gonna crease it back in here. So now I'm gonna flip this and pull the whole thing to the other side, to the right side of the sleeve. And that. So you see that extra piece that I have on the top, that gets folded up. Just to clean it up. So you need to have those corner cutting to create a triangle, otherwise you won't be able to press this properly. So I'm gonna hold the pre-creased binding that I have here and fold it over my stitch line. Instead, I'm wrapping it around my seam allowance and lining it to cover my stitch line here. And I keep that flat on top. So I want that corner to be flat. So this gets folded over and cover my stitch line here. So you see that stitch, 1/4 inch stitch line that I have? So that is gonna line up with that to cover it. You're lining up with the stitch, but you need to go a little bit farther to cover the stitch line. So we won't see it after. And that gets pressed. Obviously, this is already pressed. All I have to do just make sure you're controlling it so it stays up. So that is ready to go back to the machine and get stitched up. Okay, so I'm gonna lift the top part of the placket, get it out of the way, because I still have to stitch the bottom part first. So that is, as I said, is just like a binding around the edge, and all I have to do is just edge stitch it through now. And stop here. So that is finished. Like that. So when it comes to the top portion, you want to make sure that it is flat over, straight. We don't want it to be tilted either way, because that top portion has to get stitched down into the sleeve, so we don't want it to be tilted. So as a matter of fact, since you have all the stripes on these shirts, so you want to make sure that they're all going to line up together. At one point, when you have very obvious stripes big enough, you have to make sure that your placket cutting is in a way that the placket lines line up with the sleeve lines. But this is small enough, you can just avoid it for now. So this edge needs to be sewn down, or stitched down in here, plus the top portion. I'm gonna draw a line where my stitches wanna go. So obviously the edge that is open. So as a matter of fact, that top portion is also like a binding finishing, because the seam is still inside, and that's going to finish that seam as a binding, but it's a much wider binding. It's a 1 inch binding rather than being a 1/4 inch or 3/8 binding. And there is a shape at the top. So this is going to be my stitch line. Goes along this edge, goes along the top edge. The corner comes down in here, and it should be finished right in here. You want to make sure that this part of the placket is covered. So by putting your finger here, you will see that there is a ledge where that placket's been folded, or the stitch line, the bottom of your triangle, the base of the triangle is folded up now in here. So we want our stitch to end up there. So there is because you have two opposite sleeves. One starts stitching from the bottom going all the way around the top and ends here. The other one starts from here and goes all the way and ends in this end. So it depends which sleeve you're working on. So that stitching direction is going to be changed. So with this one, because I want to have my direction of stitching be in a way that I usually do my top stitching and edge stitching. So I should start with these cross stitches here first, and then I go around and finish it in the other side. So as I said, you want to make sure that this is sitting flat and that one is straight down without being tilted to either side. And I'm going to stitch the cross point first. And I go along the side here, go along the top corner. So at the same time, if this corner of the fold, the seam allowance underneath is sticking out, you need to push it in. Make sure it's covered. So your fold seam allowance doesn't stick out. And along this line, and now we go down. So when you go down, you want to make sure that this under placket, the under part of the placket is not under your stitch line. You don't want to close your placket down. So you shouldn't be, if you keep it straight, that's narrower than this one, it should be stick away. But you want to double check to make sure that it's not, you're not closing the placket completely. So that is going to give you this placket. So, and that's how it's going to look like underneath. So you shouldn't be seeing any raw edges sticking out underneath. So if you notice that there is a raw edge or that triangle sticks out, so that means you haven't been folding it properly, right? So that's that. So I'm going to go to the other one. As I said, that other one is going to be stitching in a different direction, opposite direction. But either way, I have to stitch the bottom placket first. So I stitch this down. So I lift the top one. So I stitch this down first. Okay? And now I'm going to line it up straight this way. And now I'm going to start stitching from the bottom of the cuff, go up and go around the corner and go and finish it the other way. So let's do that. Again, you want to go around the top, but you want to make sure that this corner, if you look at now the way it is, the seam allowance that's been folded under, the corner is sticks up. I want to push that corner in or fold it away so I don't see it after my stitch or top stitching is done.
I did it with my pocket at the point where I just kind of clipped it a bit so they kind of laid flat. Is that wrong? Can I not do that?
Clip the corner, you
Like
mean?
on a sharp point, I kind
Right.
of clip the corners a bit so they don't poke out. Is
Yeah,
that
you
wrong?
could clip
Or-
that, but this is such a small
Yeah.
and very soft fabric. If the fabric is very heavy, I would do that and clip it, but the fabric is soft and fine, it doesn't really need it. And again, where I want to finish this, because you see that top of the placket that I have here underneath and my fold underneath that, that's the base of my triangle. I want my stitch, the cross stitch goes right on top of that edge. So that would be, so you want to make sure that they're identical on both halves. Anyway. And you go across the middle here and finish it like this. So now you have, and this is the underneath again. Okay, so this part is the base of your triangle is being folded up. So you want to keep that away so you don't end up with the raw edges or that triangle sticks out here. So that is done. So that's the placket. Any questions before I move into the next level? No? Sew the sleeves into the armhole here. As I said, this is not a setting sleeve. It's just like a flat open. So the way we do it, we put the sleeves down with the right side up. So that's obviously this is the wrong side. The placket indicates the right side, and also placket indicates the back side of the sleeve. So we have the front and we have the back. The placket is always on the back side of the sleeve. And you should have notches up here indicating the back as well. So you do have a double notch in here. You do have a single notch up here, and you should have a single notch for the front. You see it? So the double notch, shoulder notch, and front notch. I'm gonna put the sleeves down like that, and I'll grab the shirt, and I have to figure out which armhole goes into this. Obviously this is the back, the placket in here is the back, so I want to make sure that the back lines up with this back. So if I put this, and that's it has to be the right sides together when I sew it. The shirt right sides together when I sew. So I'm going to bring this close here so you can see it on the camera. The placket is the back of the shirt and is also the right side of the sleeve. Then I'm going to start lining up with the right sides together. So I know this is my front. Obviously this is very obvious. They tell me this is the front with the placket and the sleeve. So that has to line up with the single notch that I have on the sleeve like that. They said my side seam is still open, so that makes it easier to stitch the sleeves in rather than going in through the loop. So I'm just going to put it flat and stitch it. So that's going to be a 1/2 inch. So in here, the shoulder seam, you should have a notch on the yoke in here that indicates the shoulder seam. That's going to line up with that top notch in here. I'm going to line it up right in here with the right sides together. Don't forget that. The right side of the shirt with the right side of the sleeve. And we do have 1/2 inch seam in here. So make sure you follow the seam allowance size that you have. If you go a little bit smaller, obviously your sleeve is going to get bigger, your armhole is going to get smaller, so that it's not going to match up. You're going to have trouble stitching it together. So make sure you have your 1/2 inch seam, follow your 1/2 inch seam and stitch it. I'm going to start stitching with 1/2 inch this way. You should have a little bit of ease on the sleeve, but on the crown of the sleeve, but you don't have too much. So just keep following your edges. Don't forget that your armhole curve is curving to the right, for instance, for this one, and sleeve crown curve is going to the other side, opposite. So you need to force them together. Don't rush to stitch the whole line once, just go an inch or a couple inches at a time, because as I said, you need to force the curves together, the edges line up. So you have to make sure the edges, they are lining up together. And you want to make sure that you're avoiding any tucks or pleats or any gathering around the crown. So your notch should line up. Can you see it? So that's the sleeve notch and that's the armhole notch. So that should line up, but make sure the edges are also lining up. At all time, these two edges, they need to be equally lined up together. I keep going. Just do a little bit at a time, a few stitches at a time to make sure that you're lining up your edges together, and if it needs a little bit of ease, because your crown has to have just a smidge slightly eased into the armhole. Otherwise your armhole is going to start puckering if it's not eased into it. So that I have double notch in here and double notch on my sleeve, on the armhole. So those double notches, they need to line up. And sometimes you need to hold the top, the armhole a little bit tighter, so let the sleeve get eased in a little bit. And then you should end up with the even seam in here. So this has to be even at the end. The same thing for the start point. So I'm gonna start doing the other sleeve now. Obviously it's gonna be opposite to this one. That one I started from the front. Now this one I start from the back. Again, this is my notch for the shoulder. I do have a double notch in here and a single notch in here. Those notches should help you to balance your sleeve as you stitch it, so the sleeve doesn't get twisted, it doesn't get shifted. And this is the notch on the sleeves. I'm just highlighting it for you to be able to see on camera, because you don't need to do that as long as you do have the notches so you can see them. So I line this up, 1/2 inch seam. Again, right sides together, don't forget that again. My double notches are lining up. So that's the easy part when you start from the bottom here, but because you have to go through that curve at the top, so you just have to make sure everything lines up as you go along. So these are the two notches at the top. He was doing so good, but
Oh, there we go. It's back.
oh, it's back. So you see the two notches at the top, the crown and my yoke or the shoulder seam. Again, don't forget that. Make sure you're lining up the edges together. I keep repeating that, emphasizing on that, because I know I've seen it all. It happens. It's a little bit awkward and hard to line it up, but you have to make sure they line up. Otherwise, they're not gonna match up. That's why I just sew a little bit at a time to be able to redirect my armhole over the sleeve. And I know you're probably gonna start pinning it together before you sew it. You could do that, but it would be nice if you can challenge yourself without the pin. And then that. Okay. So that's sewn in, both sleeves are in. Double check to make sure that everything is fine before you start serging it. It happens that your back and front gets mixed up. Your bracket should be at the back part of the shirt on both sides, okay? So as I said, serging is the next step to serge the armhole. And this is not a flat seam, as I said. You need to be careful serging this. So the seam is going to get folded up later to get top stitched. Since I like to see the right side of the serge to be shown after, so I would serge it from the sleeve side up and this side down. But either way, if you do it, it's fine. As long as you avoid accidents, you should be fine. So put it down. Try not to cut too much of your seam allowance. You can shave the edge as you do it, but do a little bit at a time. Make sure nothing gets tucked underneath. Okay, so that has to get flat underneath so you don't have that accident. So do a little bit, push everything back, clear your seam, and do that. Again, everything wants to go under the knife, keep them away. That's that. Okay, so the other one is kind of the same. Next step would be the top stitching on the armhole. As I said, if you do that flat felt version of the seam, so that automatically give you the top stitching. But since we are doing this sew, serge, and top stitching after, so that's what we need to do right now. So the seam gets folded up into the shoulder and into the bodice of the garment, the shirt. And we're gonna top stitch it on the shirt part, not on the sleeve part. So putting this down, so I push my seam up into the shirt, and I would run 1/4 of an inch top stitching here. So just make sure that you're curling your fabric to make sure your seam doesn't get tucked in and is all flat and clear, and top stitching. And again, keep folding the seam up. I'm okay. I was stitching without the thread. That sometimes is a problem.
You have no thread.
I finished the whole shirt without any thread. That would be a new invention. make sure if you winding your bobbin the way I do it, then you take the thread out of the needle. Don't do it with the thread inside. You're gonna jam your machine, break the thread. All right, I should start from here. Oh, it's still recording? Again, I've already explained, so I don't need to explain it anymore. I'm just top stitching the armhole with the seam pushed up into the body. Do the same thing to the other side. Is that clear enough? I'm not talking.
Yeah.
So just keep doing it.
Simple top stitch.
Simple top stitch 1/4 inch on the armhole, not the sleeve. Okay, so that is basically what it's gonna look like. Of course, you're gonna give it a press because of the seam allowance that we have here is a little bit wider than, so you may have to stretch your seam allowance a little bit to release that tension around the armhole. Part of the armhole seam allowance is a little bit tense. So that may create a little bit of ripples, but if you stretch it a bit, if you don't stretch it too much, you don't want to rip your fabric. So it's going to get pressed, and then we should be ready to sew the sides in. So if you're going to do that pressing first, you could. If not, you can just press them later at the same time. On one side, I could go ahead and just do a simple sew, serge, and top stitch again, which is going to be 3 steps to do. But when I do the flat felt, I'll do all in one step. So it doesn't have to go back and forth basically through the serger and come back again. But that's the option I have to give you anyway. So you have again 1/2 inch seam. That's on. So make sure your underarm seam lines up. And finish it. So that's your 1/2 inch seam. It's gonna get serged and top stitched. Let me just go and serge this and bring it back and top stitch. Top stitching, we push the seam towards the back and we top stitch it on the back. So I'm just gonna. For top stitching the side seam after you serge it, I'm gonna keep my sleeves inside out. So you have the wrong side out in here. And start top stitching from here. It depends, of course, on which side of the shirt you start. One side you start from the hem, go up into the sleeve, and the other side you have to start from the sleeves, going out and finish it at the hem. So again, it's a 1/4 of an inch seam. You just make sure the seam gets pushed back into the back part, and make sure the seams doesn't get tucked in here. Top stitch it, and then when you get into the sleeve part, you need to find your way into the sleeves like this, and do a little bit at a time as you go. Continue on with that seam, go in, so you just clear your way. So the top portion of the sleeve needs to be hold it back. Clear your way so you can have access to your seam, and just continue until you get to the cuff part of it. So it's definitely is easier if your sleeve is inside out. Okay, the wrong side of the sleeve should be out when you do this, so you can just drag into the sleeve. If you do it the other way, you're going to end up with a lot of fabric underneath, and it's going to make the life difficult for you. So now, any questions? Everything good? Everybody? So that can come out. Of course, we're going to press that. We lost our signal again. Coming back, coming back, coming back. Okay, so we'll see that is the seam that has been top stitched. When I was doing the top stitching, the monitor was on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. It's gonna get pressed, so obviously we're gonna use the arm of that pressing table, the vacuum table, and we're gonna press it. Come on. So the other side now. The other side is the flat fill. So that's the seam that you haven't done before. I'm hoping that the monitor stays on so you can see what we are doing. Basically, we're gonna put the wrong sides together, and again, that depends what we want to see outside of the shirt. If you want to see only one top stitching outside, we have we have to put the right sides together. If you want to see one line of stitching outside, so we have to put, what am I saying? Let me just reverse and go back. So if you want to see the two line of stitches, double stitching on the seam outside, so you put the wrong sides together. Double stitching, wrong sides together. If you want to see single stitching outside, so it has to be right sides together. That's one condition of it. And the other condition that you need to pay attention to, if you want your top stitching to be on the back or you want it to be on the front. So if you want the top stitching to be on the back, like what we did with the serging, so we're gonna put the wrong sides together right now. I'm gonna thinking of the double stitching outside. Okay, so with the double stitching outside, I'm gonna put the back over the front. So that means I put the front down like this and the back on top. When I hold and putting the wrong sides together, you also want to make sure that the back is over the front. So the front is underneath, the back is over. Is that clear enough, everybody? for those of you who are still not sleeping, are still awake. So just have this in mind if you want a shirt look like what I'm doing here. So have the placket, you see the placket here? So that's on top. That's the back of the shirt. And the way I line this up, the back part that is on top, I set it back by 3/8 of an inch. So I'm not gonna line up exactly to the edge. So the front seam allowance sticks out by 3/8 of an inch. Is that close enough? If I can zoom that in a little bit more. I wish it could have been tilted a little bit more. It doesn't tilt. Okay, so the way I do this, I keep the front under, the back over with the wrong sides together. Okay. I set the top, which is the back one, set it in by 3/8 of an inch, so my seam allowance underneath exposes, so it sticks up. And what I'll do, I'll fold my seam allowance over without folding this, the bottom one. Oh, the monitor is gone. Is it coming back anytime soon? I just want you to see that. I really want you to see that. Please, please come back. So you see how my seams are lining up right now, everybody? So that 3/8 of an inch of the front underneath is exposed, it's sticking out. I want to keep that. And then before I start stitching it here, I'm going to fold that 3/8 of an inch over, like this, over the seam. So when I start sewing, I do a big 1/4 of an inch in here now. I catch the edge of my seam allowance in here. At the same time, I'm catching the underlayer as well. So that's basically closes my seam. This way. Right? So just keep doing this all the way through. So that basically closes the seam, but is not finished because I'm catching both layers and the fold as well at the same time. And keep folding that over and stitching it down. Make sure you keep your seam constant and even. Trim this and that. So at the same time, I want to make sure the underarm seam is lining up. So make sure you don't miss the under edge. You want to catch it in at the stitch line. The same thing happens going all the way through. And the bottom should line up together like that. Again, your 3/8. And this gets folded and folded. So, was straightforward so far? Easy enough? Okay, so now what I need to do, I need to make this flat like that. If you have any thread or edge sticking out, just either push it in or trim it, because you don't want those threads sticks out. So then I'm going to flip it back. I push this seam to the back to cover my raw edge, to cover the raw edge this way. And I'm going to run another line of a stitch here, edge stitch this time. So make sure you're not pulling too far, too much. This way, just keep it flat, so make sure it doesn't get tucked, and edge stitch it. At the same time, clear your way. And start edge stitching. And you see that finishes the seam for you. Inside, you're gonna end up with no raw edges, and the outside double stitching. But again, the same rule applies to this. You need to flip your sleeve inside out, like that. So be able to go inside the sleeve. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to top stitch it. Same thing. Just keep doing this until you get into the sleeve. Again, you need to clear your way into the sleeve. Pull the seams back to make sure it's not getting tucked under. At the same time, you want to keep it relaxed and edge stitch it. Then pull your sleeve out. Okay, so that is giving you this seam outside, and obviously the single line inside, like so. Inside you're gonna have the seam in here, and the one top stitching shows. The outside you're gonna have two top stitching shows. Like I said, in the industry, when they use the attachment and machine to do it, you end up with both lines on either side.
So can we do either option 1 or 2, or do you want us to do both?
As I said, I'm not gonna penalize anybody if you do just the serge and sew and serge and top stitch, but I like you to at least try to see how that goes, how you can handle it. It's not very hard, it's just a matter of, don't forget that you may end up in a situation that you don't have a serger, and you need to have a finished edge, so that would be a good way to finish it. The hem. So for me, along the side of the other 3 notches we had for the placket, we have these sets of notches as well. And you do have another set probably here and here. Can you see that? 2 sets of notches here, so the 4 notches. So this 2 gives you 1 pleat, and the other 2 going to give you another pleat. So that means if you hold it from the outside, the pleats usually, you can double check the shirt there to see the direction of the pleats. Is usually towards the placket, right? Yeah. So the first two notch, so you can just grab the second notch and fold it and put it on top of the other notch. And our monitor never came back up. Okay. So that's that. I can just do this. So the second notch in here, you grab the second notch, fold it up, and you put it on the first notch like this, and you run a stitch over it. You do have probably 3/8 seam in here, so stay under the 3/8 with your tacking. You should be fine. So, and then you can grab the last notch that you have here, and monitor came back.
Came back on.
So that's this other notch in here also, you're gonna grab that notch, fold it up, and put it over the other notch. So you should be ending up with a good big, like half inch pleats in here. Okay, so sure your pleats direction is towards the placket, and you should have like half-inch space between the first pleat to the placket, and then follow that through. So let me just do the other sleeve as well. Again, this is opposite to what I did to the other one. I can start from the very last notch that I have and go towards the placket. So I grab the very last one in here, fold it over and put it over the next notch. And the same thing here again. The second notch, lift the foot a bit so you'll be able to tuck it under, and so just make sure that they are even between the two sleeves that you have. And a little bit more or less in here is gonna change the measurement around the sleeve here and give you a little bit of problem when you stitch the cuff in. So you just wanna make sure the cuff goes in with no hassle. Okay? Now with the hem, am I recording? Yeah. With the hem finishing, obviously there are attachments you can use, the 1/4 inch attachment that you can use for the roll hem. If you don't have that attachment, or if you find it difficult to use that attachment, you can do it manually. So what I want you to do to start with, because we have that curve at the bottom of the shirt, these curves here requires the out curve like this requires a little bit of shrinking when you do the hem, and this in curve here requires a little bit of a stretching. So opposite. So that curve shrink, and this curve is going to be shrinking, stretching. So for that reason, I'm going to run and stitch first, a 1/4 inch stitch. Just it's going to be, I would call it control stitch, just to control that curve in and out. So just to make it easier for me to manually stitch it. So when I get to that out curve like this, I would hold the back a little bit. So that shrinks this a bit for me. In here, I don't need it to shrink, I need to stretch it and hold it a little bit straight. And then I get to the curve again, I'm gonna hold it back just to shrink it. So that also shrinks this a bit. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
So just keep going. If it's a straight line, you don't need to shrink it. Just keep going through it. When you get to the curve again, hold it back very slightly, because this is not a big curve, it's a very slight curve. You hold it back slightly, very softly, just to shrink a bit, and then stretch in the opposite curve. And then again, shrinkage when you get to this curve, and straight again. Where you have it straight across, you don't need to do anything, just run the machine. So I'm gonna use that stitch line that I have. As you notice here where I have that curve, how easy it is. So it depends how tight you hold your finger behind the foot. That gives you, that you can control the ease that you put in here. Softly gives you a little bit less ease. Hold it hard, tight, it gives you more ease. Okay? So let's start rolling this and stitch. I'm gonna just do it manually. So I'm gonna do a double 1/4 inch fold. So in order to do that, I'm just gonna fold a 1/4 inch and fold another 1/4 inch to finish the stitch. And I will do an edge stitch here now. inside edge stitch, not the outside edge stitch. Don't forget, I want to nail the fold down, and I want to stitch the inside edge, not the outside edge. So that stitch line that you have here is the guideline for you for your fold. You fold it right at that stitch line and just fold it again. So you're folding the edge like this. So your stitch line should be staying on that edge, inside edge. So you may have to do it a little bit at a time. So help it, fold it, help it, don't stretch it too much because you already eased that in here. So here you keep going. Clean your way out here. Bear with me, let me finish this. You know what I'm doing, I don't need to explain or talk too much, so just gonna keep sewing.
Simple how.
Yeah, basically, it's just a matter of having a control to make sure your hem, your quarter-inch hem stays even. Do we want to have a 5 minutes break?
It's okay.
Power through. You don't want to come back.
Just finish.
Let's just get it over with.
Yeah,
Huh?
let's just get it done.
Monitors are gone again. Okay, so when you get to the end again, make sure you double fold and tuck it under. And you also want to make sure that this end of the fold doesn't get pushed out. It has to be even. So it gets pushed out, so that means you either didn't control it properly or you didn't ease it, didn't shrink it. And your machine obviously is going to push it out. You have to control it so it doesn't. So that is the hem. So the next step would be cuff preparation. Okay, the cuffs, we need to prep them first after serging, not serging, after fusing. So as I said, you need to leave that 3/8 of an inch seam allowance that we have here clear without fusing, so you can just fold your fabric over it. So that's the edge of the outside cuff where it gets attached to the sleeve. So the same thing as we did to our collar stand, I have to run 1/4 of an inch top stitching on this first. I'm just gonna flip it to the right side so it gives you better stitches. And I'm gonna run a big 1/4 of an inch stitch along this edge just to hold my fold down so it's not coming out anymore. So this is the finished edge for me already. Clear enough, everyone? That's that. I'm going to put it back here. I'm going to do the same thing to the other cuff. So this is get folded down, and I would run a top stitching. Okay, so I'm gonna put the fused one on top of the fabric, the cuff fabric that I have, the one that is not fused. I line it up in a way that the raw edges that I still have, they're all lined up together. So that fold edge is gonna be on top of this edge here that it sticks out. This is my seam allowance to stitch this cuff to the sleeve. And I'm gonna use that fold edge to top stitch it over. I will show you how that works. So just put this down. I'm gonna have a 1/4 inch stitch around to finish this. I'm gonna start from one end here, this point, 1/4 seam. Turn around the corner since you have a square corner, so I'm just gonna run the stitch along the top edge. Again, 1/4 inch on this side. And finish it up. So you wanna make sure that this seam allowance here sticks out. You wanna have this. This is a seam we need to have to stitch this into the sleeve. I'll do the same thing to the other cuff. So you start from that corner, go along the top edge,
Is it a 1/4 inch?
1/4 inch. And you go down on the other side. Okay. So if you have fusing anything going into the corner, you need to clip the corner to kind of reduce the bulk. If you don't have the fusing into the corner, so it's just a fabric, all you have to do is just do a fold, fold, and flip it. Fold and fold the seam over and press it out. So you always can use the awl to get the corner out. You want to make sure you don't damage your fabric. You want to make sure that corner sticks out completely, so it doesn't get tucked in. And this one as well, you have something sharp to push it. Don't push it too hard. You don't want to deform the corner. So you're gonna give it good press in here, just to flatten your seam. So then when you can take it to the iron and give it a good press. You do the same thing to the other one. Put your thumb inside the corner for this seam over your thumb. And this all gets folded over the other one, just to create that square corner there, and push the whole thing out. Same thing on this side, and push it out. And if it's not completely out, use your awl and push it, or use something sharp to push the corner out, and to pull the corner out. So I can just take this to the iron and give it a good press before I start top stitching. I'm going to do my top stitching, most of my top stitching, before I start stitching it to the sleeve. So let's go to the iron so you can see. It's not a deal, all you have to do, just put it down like this. Make sure your seam is, if you press the seam ahead of time flat, so that is going to make it easier when you fold it, so you don't have that fabric getting tucked in there. So you just press it. So let me just go and give this a press. I'll come back. And so I got these two cuffs. My seam allowance is pretty even, considering. So what you want to do, you want to make sure that these seam allowances are even all along, and that matches your seam allowance on the sleeve. So if one side is smaller than the other, you need to trim them back to make them even. Okay. Right now it's good. What I need to do now, I need to run a top stitching in here before I start stitching. That's how the industry gets done, the shirt. But you could start stitching this into the sleeves and then do all your top stitching after, but that's not the way industry does it. So I just want to make sure that we are all aware of that. So in here, I'm going to start stitching from here, going up, going along here, and stop here. So I stop like ½ inch above. It depends what kind of seam I have here. 3/8 seam, I stop like 3/8 above the edge. So I start my top stitching from here and end it here. Okay? So let's do that. So that's the 1/4 inch top stitching. So at the same time, you want to make sure if the edge is sticking out, the underlayer, push it in. Or pull it from this side so it gets rolled under. And the same thing on this end, if the edge is sticking out, just roll it under and top stitch. I stop here, so you'll see that part stays open because I still have to be able to push the seam inside the cuff after it's done. I have to have room for the seam to go in, right, to hide it. If you stitch it all the way through, we won't be able to push the seam in. So leave that open. Let me just do the other one. Any questions so far? You're good? So that cuff is prepped. As I said, if your seam is not even, by looking at this, I can see that I have like good big 3/8 here, ½ inch in the middle, and I need 3/8 here. So I could trim that to make it even. Because I want my seam allowances to be even, so I can just trim a little bit in the middle. Okay. Good for the next step. So now I'm gonna grab the shirt. My sleeve right now has to be right side out. Just because this cuff is gonna get sewn inside the sleeve, it folds back, and this edge is gonna get edge stitched into the cuff. So to start stitching this, I'm gonna put my sleeve down like that. So first of all, you need to double check your placket to make sure that the under placket and the top placket, they are even in here. If one is longer than the other like this, you need to correct it. At this point, correcting it is just trimming it, make sure that it's even. So doesn't matter which one is longer or shorter, you need to trim back. But if it's like inch different, that you cannot just go ahead and trim it. Something went wrong along the way, you need to fix it. But right now, this is good. All I have to do, as I said, I'm gonna start stitching inside this cuff, inside the sleeve. I'm gonna grab the cuff, I'll line it up right inside the sleeve, and this edge needs to be lined up. Okay. Put it down, and obviously whatever is sticking out from here, from this fold edge, this is my fold edge here, whatever is sticking out is my seam allowance. So I would just stitch right beside that fold edge without catching that fold edge in this stitch because I want it to be free still, right? I want it to be free for the seam to go in. So you either can just keep that edge under the foot and just sew right beside it without catching, oh it's gone again, without catching the fold edge. Or you can just lift this up as long as your seam allowance is even, you know what you're doing, just lift this up and line up the seam and continue stitching. Either way is fine. But as I said, that should give you a guide where that stitch line should be. So double check to make sure that your cuff and your sleeves are the same. Right now, by holding this, I can tell you that my cuff is a little bit too big for my sleeve. So it's not the cuff that is something wrong with it, maybe it's the pleat that I did here. A little bit less or more that makes a difference. So I could release one of the pleats. If that's the case, release one of the pleats so you can just adjust it accordingly. Because I want to pull this. Let me just continue stitching here. Right now I got that much extra because I opened up one of the pleats. So I can just go back and do my pleat again, but this time I do a little bit less. So make sure that this lines up. Right?
Yep.
And continue on. I wish the monitor was on. So that gets sewn in like that. Oh, did I reverse that please? Yes, I did. So I just want to correct that again because it was flipped. Right now the ends are attached. All I have to do is just to correct my pleats. Okay. And the next step would be just flipping your sleeve like that. Push the seam allowance inside the cuff. Can you all see from the back there? Oh, the monitor's back on. So push the seam inside the cuff. So, but don't forget you have to sew the cuff in a way that your cuff doesn't stick out from here or doesn't start folding your placket. If you don't bring it right to the edge, it's gonna start folding your placket in. If you let it go out, obviously your cuff is gonna stick out. You will see the corner. You want it to be very flush. And you can just start edge stitching it. So, and at the same time, you want to go ahead and line up your stitch line with the fold and cover your stitch line so you don't see it. And again, doing this sometimes happen that your top gets pushed towards you, the bottom gets pulled from you. So that cuff gets shifted and twisted. You want to make sure that that doesn't happen. You need to have a control over this. Push the cuff in. The seam allowance inside. Make sure the end is flush. And hide your seam. Hold it. Control it so it doesn't stick out. That is the cuff. So obviously the big placket is on top. That's where the buttonhole is going to be. Button is going to be underneath. Okay. So let me just do the other cuff. I'll call it a day at this point. I feel that it's a little bit too much
That's
at
fine.
this point.
Would we do the buttons just kind of like independently or next week or?
Well, I will give you the next week in class to finish this.
Okay.
But as long as it's within our class time,
Yes.
I will accept it.
Okay.
Okay? So I'll see if I can go through the buttonhole today,
Okay.
or I have to do it next week, right at the beginning,
Okay.
and then you finish your buttonhole in class.
I mean, they're pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
Not bad. I mean,
You can
I
do it
might be
myself.
able to borrow a domestic machine for sewing the button.
If we have a home machine that does buttons, should we do that or would you prefer like the industrial?
Well, let me see how the buttonhole machine works.
Okay.
If it works, we set it up so this is much faster than your home machine doing the buttonhole. And if not, you are on your own doing your buttonhole on your domestic machine. Depending on the machine, attitude at that point, basically. So we'll see. Let me just stitch that cuff quickly. Just that would be a repeat for you again to see how that cuff works. Again, double check to make sure the plackets are even. So I'm looking at this right now. You'll see the edge of that placket underneath sticks out a little bit. It's just maybe 1/16 of an inch. It's not a big deal. It's not too much. Still, I want to trim it back to make sure it's even. Otherwise, your cuff is not going to be even. If you leave it uneven like this, your cuff is not going to line up. So again, hopefully this pleat is going to be okay, because now I have to start from the pleat side to sew and go into the other side. So it's not going to give me the opportunity to adjust the pleat after if it's not even. So I want to measure it first to make sure it's okay. If it's okay and if it's even, I'll go ahead, but still it's a little bit short. I'm going to adjust my pleat ahead of time before I go too far to make sure that I don't end up short in the other end. And at the same time, I want to make sure that they are kind of even with the other cuff. You don't want it to be different. So whatever you do to one cuff, you do to the other as well. Hopefully that would be okay now. That's pretty good. So let's proceed. I line it up again. This is very important in here, how you line up your edges together in here, where the cuff is lining up with the placket. So it has to be even, but you should be able to see the edge of the placket. Yeah. And when you start sewing in here, just put your foot a little bit farther in, like a 1/4 inch in on top. Start with the reverse, otherwise right off the bat, the foot start pushing your cuff away. So start right with the back, reverse, so that stabilize the cuff in place, and then you can go forward. I'm not gonna explain anymore since we've done that one. It's just a straight sewing now. And I want to make sure the ends are lining up together again. Just a little bit of adjustment with the pleats will give you the opportunity to finish this properly. Again, I'm just thinking, no, I still have to have my shirt with me. I was just gonna leave this open so you have access to see inside the cuff what's happening. I don't finish this one in case you need to refer to this. So how that works, so you have access inside the cuff to see it. I'm gonna leave that one for now. Basically, this shirt is all together at the moment. So all needs to be happening with this is, we didn't even put the label into this. Okay, so I'm gonna stick the label in there before we start doing your yoke. You've done your yoke already, yeah. Well done. So it's gonna get hand tagged in there. Anyway. So we just need to label this somehow with the Seneca label, your name and information on, so because we don't want to write on the shirt obviously. So that label is gonna get tagged into the yoke in there. Alright, so that's it for now.